Maniac McGee, Chapter 41. Oh, remember, he was invited to their birthday party and he said he'd come if he could bring someone. Well, the McNabb boys didn't know whom they did expect Maniac to bring to the party, but one thing for sure is they did not expect him to come walking through the front door with a black kid. And that was only half of it. From the way the kid swaggered in, from the candy bar that jutted like a chocolate stogie from the corner of his mouth, from the ripstone evil scowl on his face, the kid had to be none other than Marsbar Thompson himself. If black meant bad, if black meant in-your-face nastiness, if black meant as far from white as you could get, then Marsbar Thompson was the blackest of the black. Here, in the middle of the living room, stopping the party, the neighborhood kids, the Cobras, even George McNabb, stopping them dead as traffic. Just walked in through the front door, that steel door. He just breezed right on in, past the bar, standing there, I own in this joint here. Before they knew what was happening, before anybody could reach for anything. Which, of course, is just what Maniac had in mind. Remembering how little Grayson had known about black people and black homes, thinking of the McNabbs' wrong-headed ideas and notions, thinking of Marsbar's knee-jerk reaction to anyone wearing white skin, and thinking naturally, what would you expect? Whites never go inside blacks' homes, much less inside their thoughts and feelings, and blacks are just as ignorant about white people. What white kid could hate black people after spending 5 minutes in the Beals' house? And what black kid could hate white people after answering Mrs. Pickwell's dinner whistle? But the East Enders stayed in the East End, and the West Enders stayed in the West, and the less they knew about each other, the more they made up and invented. It hadn't been easy finding Marsbar, taking all his lip about cheating on the race, taking some bumps, some shoves. Marsbar was goading him to fight. But keeping his own cool, matching Marsbar glare for glare, telling him he wasn't as bad as he thought he was, really stoking him, making him slam his candy bar to the ground. No, you want to tell me why so bad, fish belly, huh? Go ahead, 'fore I waste you. They were standing chest to chest, and keeping cool and letting Marsbar do all the huffing. Well, it's simple, Mars. You don't cross Hector Street. You stay over here on the black side where it's safe. How bad could you be over there? Stepping back, then folding his arms, smugging it up just enough, standing there in his white skin, gazing nonchalantly. Standing there in his white skin, gazing all nonchalantly about 6 blocks deep in the heart of the black side of town. I guess that makes me badder than you, Marsbar. Well, they did not go straight to the McNabbs. First, they went to the Pickwells. Maniac wanted Marsbar to see the best that the West Side had to offer. The little Pickwells made as much fuss over Marsbar as over Maniac. They believed, as did all little kids in the West End, that he carried around 100 Marsbars with him at all times, and not surprisingly, Mrs. Pickwell never batted an eye when she saw who was coming to dinner. It was quite a sight, all right. 16 Pickwells, plus Maniac, plus a down-and-out golf caddy, 18 so-called white faces, and Marsbar Thompson. To his credit, Marsbar didn't use the word fishbelly or honky once, though on occasion he did bend the truth a little bit. When a Pickwell kid asked him if it was true about the famous race in April, did Maniac really beat him going backwards? Marsbar studied his fork for a minute and said, yeah, he went backward, but you got the story all wrong. That wasn't me that he beat. That was my brother, Milky Way. The little kids couldn't understand why the grown-ups were laughing for 5 minutes after that. As for Marsbar himself, his expression never changed until the dinner was almost over, when the littlest non-baby Pickwell, Dolly, called him Mr. Barr. And even then it wasn't so much a smile as a crack in the glare. Even if Mars Bar wasn't letting on, Maniac could tell he was pleased to learn his fame had spread to the West End. And when they left, half the Pickwell kids followed them, begging Mars Bar to perform his legendary feat of stopping traffic. Don't, Maniac warned. It might not work over here. But the Pickwells persisted, and when they reached Marshall Street, Mars Bar commanded, Stay here. And he stepped out into the traffic. Not only did he shamble, jive, and shook and hip-doodle at his own sweet pace, he did something he had never done in the East End. He came to a complete and utter halt halfway across the street and let nothing but the evil in his eyes take care of the rest. He stood like that for a full minute, and by the time he finally moved on to the far side, so the legend goes, 23 cars, several bicycles, and a bus were stacked to a dead stop in both directions. Maniac hurried across while the Pickwells stood at the curb, cheering and waving goodbye. But nobody was cheering now in Fort McNabb. And Maniac knew that despite the swagger and the scowl and the chocolate candy bar cigar, Mars Bar Thompson was one uneasy dude. Mars Bar Thompson was scared. Chapter 42. George McNabb was the first to speak up. He was stretched out on the only new piece of furniture in the house. It was a tilt-back lounge chair. Said McNabb, What's he doing here? The awkward silence that followed was mercifully broken by Piper, tugging on Maniac's arm. Where's my birthday present? What'd you get me, huh? Maniac pulled the present from his pocket, and Piper exclaimed, A watch! No, said Maniac. It's a compass. It tells you which direction you're going. Yeah, like to the ocean? The ocean, Mexico, anywhere in the world. There's only one thing. What's that? Maniac took the compass from Piper's hand. I'm keeping it till school's over. If you go to school every day, both of you, then you can have it for when you sail around the world. On our raft. Piper cheered. Is it a deal? Piper and Russell and Maniac did a three-way high five. It's a deal! George McNabb pulled himself up from the easy chair and shuffled into the kitchen. He wore bareback slippers over his bare feet. His white ankles were dirty. He took a beer can from the fridge and he headed for the steps. Let me know when it leaves, he said, and he went upstairs. Maniac could feel the voltage that surged through Mars Bar and crackled black lightning from his eyes, and quickly he clapped his hands. Hey, isn't this a party? Where are the games? So they played games. They played silly games, whose main object seemed to be shrieking and screaming, and Mars Bar allowed himself to be dragged into them, but his jaw was clenched, and his eyes kept straying to the gaping hole in the ceiling, and he kept looking at the cobras, who were slouching against the wall and baseboards, sipping beers, and watching his every move. None of them had spoken since Mars Bar and Maniac walked in the door. Of course, as far as the little kids were concerned, the highlight of the whole party was not the birthday boy, Piper McNabb. The highlight of the party was the pillbox. They found every excuse to go in and out of that thing. They fought over space at the narrow gunnery slots. When Mars Bar whispered to Maniac, Man, what is that? Maniac said, It's a bomb shelter. Then Russell called, Let's play rebels. Whites get in the pillbox. Blacks get outside. A cheer went up and a dozen kids stampeded into the pillbox. Their gabbles circled the cinder block walls and popped from the gunnery slops. I'm going to be white. Yeah, I'm white too. Me too. Yeah, there's too many in here. We need more people to be black. Not me. Not me. But we ain't got enough guns. Only the ones with guns are inside. The rest of you gotta get out. You gotta be black. Give me a gun. I heard it first. Come on, you meatballs. Black is the best part. You get to charge. Yeah, we get to lose. Look, you can use beer cans for grenades. You can lob grenades. Then you do it. Well, somebody's got to be black, else we ain't playing. I'm counting. When the time I hit 10, I want to see 5 of you out of here. 1. Russell counted. Nobody came out. Not at 9, not at 10, not even after 10. And Maniac and Mars Bar stared in silence at the gunnery slots, where wide open eyes began to appear, one a pair atop another. The 3 words that Mars Bar the 3 words that Mars Bar sneered, the joke that he spat out. Yeah, bomb shelter. Did not even have the moment to themselves, for just then another word, Geronimo! Came plunging from the sky and landed with a floor-jarring, heart-stopping crash directly behind him. One of the cobras had jumped from a hole. He was a fat, red-haired cobra who was now rolling on the floor and laughing so hard, as were all the cobras, that his face matched the color of his hair. You see him? You see him jump? You see his face? Somebody go check out his pants, check out his drawers. Oh, man. Maniac had to wrap Mars Bar in a bear hug to keep him from charging that fat red roller. The laughter stopped as if cut by scissors. The cobras were standing. John McNabb sauntered forward. You got a problem, Sonny? That wasn't funny, John, said Maniac. He could have been hurt. Maniac kept his eyes on Mars Bar. I ain't talking to you, McGee. I'm talking to Sonny Boy here. Don't you like our party, Sonny Boy? Mars Bar strained against Maniac's arms. Psst, man, you ain't got to worry about me coming to no more of your parties, fish belly, and you ain't got to worry about me invading this piss hole. Anybody come a block away, they faint from the smell of this place. McNabb advanced. Maniac shouted, John, you owe me! I brought the boys back! McNabb took another step and then stayed. The cobras all stayed, and Maniac, clamping the struggling Mars Bar for dear life, lugged him down a gauntlet of seething eyes to the door and to the street. Mars Bar wrenched free and stomped on ahead. Maniac followed. It was almost dark. High above the streetlights were buzzing on, one by one. After several blocks, Mars Bar wheeled. Man, you suckered me. You softened me up with them Pickwell peoples. Then you bring me here. Would you think I was going to cry? Okay, I come over. I did it. It's done. And don't you be coming around no more. You hear me, fish belly? Because you ain't only seen half bad yet. He turned and headed due east. Maniac walked another way. It was a good question. What had he thought by bringing him there? What did he expect, a miracle? Well, come to think of it, maybe a miracle had happened. While he was looking for one miracle, maybe another one had snuck up on him. It happened as he was clamping and lugging Mars Bar down the gauntlet of cobras, trying to keep him alive. And what was Mars Bar doing? Mars Bar was fighting him, fighting Maniac, straining to get loose and bust some cobras. He was outnumbered, outweighed, but he wasn't outhearted. That's when Maniac felt it. Pride. This kid had pride. For this East End warrior whom Maniac could feel trembling in his arms, he was scared as any normal kid would be. But he wasn't going to show it to them. Yeah, you're bad all right, Mars Bar. You're more than bad. You're good. Maniac stopped. He had been walking in circles, and it was dark, and he turned one way and then another, and for the briefest moment thinking to go home, thinking, it's time to go home now. And then remembering, once again, he had no home to go to. Chapter 43. He slept in the park that night, and for the next dozen or so, sometimes in the buffalo shed, other times the band shell benches or the pavilion. The nights were warm now, and June was on the way. He ate when and where he could, for apples and carrots and day-old hamburger buns. You couldn't beat the Deer and Buffalo pen. A new Acme grocery store had opened, and the bakery section always had a tray of free samples sitting on the counter. And then there were always the Pickwells. It may have been an illusion, but it seemed that the hungrier he got, the farther Mrs. Pickwell's whistle traveled. Some dinner times, there was hardly a spot in town from which he could not hear that whistle. He read books in the library. He joined pickup games in the park, baseball, basketball. School was letting out, and there were more kids around. Mornings were the best, though. He would rise with the sun's color, before the sun itself, before the bison set out. He came to think of these apple skin hours as his special time with the town of 2 Mills. There was not a street or an alleyway or a house or a store, not even a garage that he did not recognize. His footsteps fell everywhere but on the bridge. The one place, the bridge over the Schuylkill. His eyes everywhere, except on that P&W trestle where his parents died. He looked everywhere, he went everywhere. But there. And the people. Most of the people he didn't know by name or face, yet they revealed themselves to him even as they slept. He knew people by their windows and their cars and their porches and the toys they left outside. But most of all, he knew them by their backyards, their flowers, their weeds, their junk, their pet houses, tree houses, vegetable gardens, rubber tires, grass, ranging from desert sparse to shaggy to trim as a Marine's haircut. The backyards were as different as individual faces. East End and West End, black and white. That only began when the alarm clocks went off. For now, before sunrise, there was no black, there was no white. There were no divisions, no barriers. There was only the people, the families, and the town. His town. It was his town as much as anyone's. He knew he could be sleeping right then in the Beals' house, or the Pickwells', or even the McNabbs. But beyond that, for a few enchanted moments each morning, each newborn morning, he believed there was not a single home in 2 Mills, not a single one, that would not happily welcome him to enter and go upstairs and curl up between its sleepers. Maybe that's why he left his bandshell bench late one night in mid-June, and he went to someone's backyard on Hamilton Street. Someone whose leaf lettuce he had watched growing, and quietly opened the gate and closed it behind him, and he laid himself down on a white wicker love seat on the back porch. And from then on, he slept in a different backyard or a different back porch every night. Once, finding the back door unlocked, he slept in someone's kitchen. Chapter 44. One morning in early July, cruising down the apple skin hour, Maniac thought he heard footsteps other than his own. He stopped. Only the vast quietness responded. It happened a few more times. Must be his own footfalls echoing down the row house canyons. 2 days later, passing an alley, he thought something moved at the other end. And once, turning onto a broad street, he had the feeling, well, more sense than feeling or sight, that something had just flashed around a corner 2 blocks away. When these odd sensations continued for another morning or two, Maniac knew he was not alone. So he was not totally surprised when a few mornings later he turned a corner and ran smack into another early hour cruiser. No, it wasn't the what that surprised him, it was the who. It was Mars Bar Thompson. They quickly bounced off of each other and went their separate ways. Neither paused, neither said a word. This was the first in a series of apparently random mergings. Intersections, alleyways, one never knew when he would come upon the other. Sometimes they found themselves running the same route, only a block apart. On one occasion, they trotted down the same street at the same time in the same direction, but on the opposite side of the street. And then one day, as it happened, they turned a particular corner at the same moment, and they headed off in the same direction, side by side. Still neither spoke, not even their eyes met. They jogged silently for a block, and then they veered apart. The next time they dovetailed, They stayed that way for 2 blocks, then 3 blocks, and so on. No words, no looks. Just the rhythmic slapping of their sneaker soles upon the sidewalk, and the pulsing duet of their breathing. Stride for stride, shoulder to shoulder, breath for breath, till they were matching on all points. They were a harnessed pair, 2 runners that had become one. Morning after morning it happened this way, the 2 of them dovetailing at one intersection, and without the slightest hitch and stride, cruising off together. Though each face showed no awareness of the other, they were in fact minutely sensitive to each other. If Marsbar cranked up the pace just a notch, Maniac would pick up within a stride, and if Maniac inched ahead, Marsbar was right there with him. If one of them veered to the left or to the right, the other one followed like a shadow. One day, one was a leader, the next the other. And one day, Marsbar would lead Maniac down the river, down the tracks, past the railroad gondolas, each with its mountain of coal, to the rolling mill at the steel plant where Marsbar's father worked. Another day, Maniac would head for the townships to the north and west, the farmlands of the county where dew sparkled on spider webs and nature was doing such fresh and wonderful things that you could almost hear the long, neat congregation of corn clapping amen and amen. And when the working people began leaving their houses, the daybreak boys diverged. Marsbar to the east end, and Maniac to wherever it is he went. A week passed, a second week, morning after morning, stride for stride, breath for breath. Never a word, never a glance. Each boy believing the other simply happened to be going where he was going. They were cruising Main Street one morning, passing the Grand Movie Theater, when Piper McNabb came screaming down the middle of the empty street. He was wild-eyed and crying, and he was soaking wet. His feet were slathered in cold black mud. He shrieked and babbled at them, but he wasn't making any sense. So they just followed as he raced frantically, screaming back up the street. And as they ran, the belch-like toot of a whistle grew louder and louder. Whoop! Whoop! It was a train whistle. He led them to the corner of Main Street and Swede Street, to where the platform of the P&W trolley terminal hung high above the sidewalk. He burst into the terminal building and up the steps, and in a moment Maniac and Marsbar were on the train platform, gasping and following Piper's pointing finger down the tracks. What they saw pulled the fragments of Piper's babble together. The boys had been playing a game called Bombs Away. Piper's part was to sail the raft down the river. Russell's part was to wait on the trolley trestle, the one where Maniac's parents were killed. He would wait on the trolley trestle that spanned the river, and when Piper passed the raft underneath, bombs away, he would drop rocks. Everything went as planned, unless you count Russell's failing to sink the raft, and Piper's practically drowning trying to beach it, until Piper returned to the terminal to find Russell still out on the trestle. Apparently, without the target below to focus on, Russell had suddenly discovered how high up he was, and he panicked. One false step and he would slip right between the ties down to the river. And that's where Russell was now. He was out on the middle of the trestle, the P&W trestle, high over the water of the Skull-Killed River. He was frozen in terror, not even a railing to cling to, responding neither to Piper's cries nor to the red and yellow whoop, whoop, the red and yellow P&W trolley, which also occupied the trestle, idling and tooting its horn about 20 feet away. Piper mulled at Maniac. "Save him! Save him!" Marsbar stared with growing astonishment at Maniac, whose wide, unblinking eyes were fixed on the trestle where his parents had died and made him an orphan. His eyes were fixed on the trestle, yet somehow he didn't seem to register what was there, nor did he seem to hear Piper pleading with him, with the drenched, mud-footed kid clawing all over him. Maniac turned without a word, without a gesture, and he left. He left the platform and he went downstairs, and shortly he appeared on the sidewalk below. He was crossing Main Street, and he was continuing to walk slowly up Swede Street, with Piper screaming after him from the end of the platform. Chapter 45. McGee! McGee! Maniac's first groggled thought was that it was the buffalo calling to him, and then he thought, no, it's the superintendent. He's discovered me and he's come to kick me out. He propped himself on his elbows, swatted a straw from his ear, and gave a better listen. McGee! McGee! Mars Bar. It was the second night following the morning back at the train trestle. Maniac had been asleep in the buffalo lean-to. He stood up. McGee! Where are you? Here, I'm over here. He headed towards the voice over the hoof-chopped earth. The moon was full, and he could see Mars Bar's dark form against the fence. Then he could see his eyes. What are you doing here? Man, I've been looking for you. I heard you hung out here. Where'd you hear that? Amanda Beale. Man, you really sleep here? What do you want, Mars Bar? Man, where's the buffaloes? I can't see them. They're sleeping like every other person that's got sense. What are you doing here at this time of night, Mars Bar? I snuck out. If I'm not there when they wake up, they'll figure I'm out running like usual. Man, ain't you afraid in there? No. Both boys fell silent. Cricket talk and fireflies held the night. McGee. Yeah? Man, I got to ask you something. Go ahead. Why didn't you go out there after that kid? Why did you go away? Maniac didn't answer. Listen, man, I know you wasn't scared. I know it. So I had to come ask you. Maniac's voice came faintly. Is he okay? I asked you first. Maniac drew a long breath. You want to come in? Mars Bar laughed. You can. Ain't no buffalo gonna eat this dude. They don't eat people. Well, then you come out here, man. Maniac climbed the fence and he started to walk. Mars Bar walked with him. Maniac told him the story of his parents' death over the Skullkill River. He told about his problems with the trestle, how he had learned to avoid it, and then all of a sudden, there I was on the platform looking out at it, closer to it than I'd ever been before. I was up on the same level. I always saw it from below before, but now I was up there too. Where they were. I was looking down, and it was more real than ever. The nightmare was worse than ever, and I saw the trolley coming, and I saw it falling, and them, and my parents, I saw them up. They walked in silence past the silo-shaped cage of the broken-winged golden eagle. Mars Bar swallowed hard, and his voice was hoarse. Yeah, I knew you wasn't scared. Maniac sniffed. I don't remember much, but the next thing I knew, I was somewhere up on Swede Street. Man, somebody come down the East End like you did? Psst, all by himself, a fish belly, and got all up in my face? Huh? He rippled a stick along the deer pen fence. I knew scared, wasn't it? So, Maniac said, what happened? Mars Bar laughed and wagged his head. Happened? Man, I still can't believe it. He rippled the fence with a stick. This little honky, he look at me all his crybaby face and says, okay, can I go out and get his brother? And I look around like there's somebody else here. And I says to him, who are you talking to, me? I'm just pulling his chain, only he don't know it. 'Cause I'm ticked a little bit, 'cause there he was hollering for you up the street, and there I am standing right alongside the damn stupid white potato. You understand what I'm saying? Maniac nodded, and out of the darkness came the strangest sound, a kind of amplified gulp. Mars Bar jumped. What was that? Emu, said Maniac. Over there. Behind the nearest fence loomed a tall, thin neck, topped by a small head. An what? An emu, second largest bird in the world after the ostrich. They're from Australia. I don't remember studying about no emu. Are you a buddy with all these dudes? No, just the buffalo. So go ahead, what happened? What happened? Mars Bar snorted. What happened was, I went out and rescued that dumb fish. I'd like to get myself killed out there. Maniac touched Mars Bar's arm. Is he okay? Mars Bar snickered. Yeah, he's okay. But that ain't the main part. The main part is how he was all grabbing onto me, coming off them tracks, shaking and shivering and hugging me like he wanted to climb inside me. I was afraid. He shook his head and giggled. I was afraid that fish belly was going to kiss me. They laughed, and Maniac tried to picture it. The two of them making their way across the train trestle, tie by tie, arms wrapped around each other. And even that ain't the mainest part, Maniac, said Mars Bar, his voice rising in wonder. Even when we get off, that midget wouldn't let me go. We're off now, I says to him. You're rescued now. But all he does is grab me harder like he's an octopus or something. Off the platform, down the steps, out to the street. He's still doing it. I couldn't pry him off me nohow. So, what did you do? Said Maniac. What'd I do? I took him home. What? Mars Bar shrugged. I figured I was going to let my mom pry him off of me. Of course, the other one had to come too, but I made him leave them muddy sneakers outside. He put his nose to a fence. What's in there? I don't see nothing. Well, that's Prairie Dog Town. They're underground. So then what happened? So, my mother took over. She pried that one off of me, and as soon as she does, he jumps right onto her like an octopus. I go to pull him off, and she gets all mad at me and says to let him go. So I let him go. And she gets the wet one all dried off and takes off his clothes and puts my old stuff on him. Stuff she's been saving in case I get a little baby brother someday. But I won't, because my mom can't have no babies anymore. And I ain't even come to the craziest part yet. What's that? Asked Maniac. They didn't want to go home. They stayed all day, my mother babying them and feeding them, and I tell her not to, and she swats me away. And sometimes my mom ain't got no kind of sense. She makes me play games with them, Monopoly and stuff, and finally my father drives them home. It's after dark. They're getting out the car, and you know what they say to me? 'Cause I'm in the car too. He wagged his head. They ask me to come in and play that stupid game of theirs, Rebels. And they beg me. And they say, come on, please, if you play with us, we'll let you be white. Can you believe that? Maniac chuckled. Yeah, I believe it. And they walked on. McGee. Yeah? I had to ask you something. Now I gotta tell you something. What's that? Man, you smell just like the buffalo. Ears of 100 different shapes prickled at the long, loud laughter of the boys. McGee, Mars Bar said after a spell. Yeah? My mother wants to ask you something, too. Your mother? Well, yeah, like I told her about you, you know. Actually, she already heard about you. So? Yeah, she wants to know, why don't you come to our house? Maniac turned and stared directly at Mars Bar, and Mars Bar looked away. He said nothing more. They walked on, silent among the crickets and the fireflies. Having made a full circle of the zoo, they were back at the pen of the American bison. Maniac just said, I can't. Why not? My house not good enough for you? My mother not good enough for you? Maniac struggled for words. I didn't say I didn't want to. It's just, well, I don't know. Things happen. I just can't. Look, man, Mars Bar snapped. Ain't nobody saying come live with us. All we're saying is, well, all she's saying is, you want to come for a little, visit? You want to, well, come on, you can. That's all. Don't go making no big thing about it, man. And say no big thing. Maniac shuddered. He turned his eyes to the sky, beyond the flickering fireflies to the stars. If there were answers, they were as far away as the constellations. I gotta go, he said, and before Mars Bar could react, he was over the fence and hurrying off to the lean-to. Chapter 46. The teeth of the buffalo clamped firmly upon his ear and lifted his head up from the straw, up from the sleep. Mars Bar was right, they do eat people. The buffalo did more than bring great pain to his ear. It spoke to him. Ain't you nice? Ain't you nice? But the voice of the buffalo was the voice of Amanda Beale. In its teeth were her fingers pulling and wrenching his poor ear till he was sitting upright. You see that? She snapped, and she scrambled his brains with a smack to his head. He'd rather she pulled his ear. There you go, making me say ain't. I have not said that word all year long, and now you go making me so mad. She snatched a handful of straw and flung it at him. I'm sorry, he said, and he wondered if he would have better luck sleeping in the emu pen. Can I ask you a question? Make it quick, she growled. Except for making you say ain't. What is it that I'm saying sorry for? What? She screeched. She was standing above him with her hands on her hips. He didn't need the light of day to feel the look on her face. Oh, you sorry for a whole mess of things, boy. You sorry because you didn't accept Snicker's invitation to his house. And you're sorry because he came throwing a ball up against my bedroom window and waking me up and telling me I had to go get up out of my bed and sneak out of my house in the middle of the night and come out here and do something about this. That's why you're sorry, boy. Maniac yawned. Snickers? That's what I'm changing his name to. How bad can you act if everybody's calling you? She said it loud. Snickers! A voice came rasping from over the fence. Shut up, girl! Maniac howled with laughter. It struck him that it had been a long time since he had reared back like that to laugh, so he just let the laughter carry on as long as it wanted. And when he finally settled down, Amanda said, Okay, come on, let's go. Huh? Let's go. Where? Home. Whose? Mine, yours, ours. Come on, I'm sleepy. Oh, no. Maniac opened his mouth to speak, to protest, to explain, but there was too much. 100 nights would not be long enough to explain and to make her understand why he couldn't go. So he simply said, I can't. And he laid back down. In an instant, he was bolt upright again, yanked by a hand he could not believe belonged to a girl. Don't you go telling me can't. I didn't come all the way down here in my night clothes and my slippers and climb that fence and almost kill myself so I could hear you tell me I can't. No, she was yelling now. Several pens away in Prairie Dog Town stirred. Heads were popping up in the moonlight. You got it all wrong, Buster. You ain't got... Ooh, see? She kicked him. You don't have a choice. I'm not asking you, Maniac. I'm telling you. You coming home with me and you're going to sleep in my room, which is going to be your room. And I don't care if you sleep on the floor or you sleep on the windowsill or whatever you sleep. But you're going to sleep there and not here. And you're going to sleep there tonight. And you're going to sleep there tomorrow night. And the night after that. And the night after that. And every night except maybe once in a while if you decide to go sleep over at Snicker's house. If he ever asks you again, this is not your home. Now move. She jerked him to his feet. Applause and a brief whistle came from the fence. Amanda led him by the hand across the muddy, lumpy earth. Now boost me, she commanded at the fence, and he boosted her. Mars Bar helped her down from the other side, and Maniac hesitated, and then climbed over himself. They walked through the zoo, down the boulevard. The three of them, Amanda and Mars Bar / Snickers and Maniac. Amanda grumbling all the way. You more trouble outside the house than you are in it. Now I'm going to have to throw these slippers away, boy. There's probably buffalo poop all over them. And you better not come within 10 feet of me, boy, till you get a bath. Maniac said nothing. He was quite content and happy to let Amanda do all the talking, for he knew that behind her grumbling was all that he had ever wanted. He knew that finally, truly, at long last, someone was calling him to come home. The end. Now I'm going to go back and read to you the opening of Maniac McGee and see if it makes sense now. They say that Maniac McGee was born in a dump. They say his stomach was a cereal box and his heart was a sofa spring. They say he kept an 8-inch cockroach on a leash and the rat stood guard over him while he slept. They say if you knew he was coming and you sprinkled salt on the ground and he ran over it, within 2 blocks or 3 blocks he would be as slow as everyone else. They say. What's true? What's myth? It's hard to know. Finsterwald's gone now, yet even today you'll never find a kid sitting on the steps where he once lived. The Little League field is still there, and the band shell. Cobble's Corner still stands at the corner of Hector and Birch, and if you ask the man behind the counter, he'll take the clump of string out of a drawer, and he'll let you see it. Grade school girls in 2 mills jump rope and chant, Maniac, Maniac, he's so cool. Maniac, Maniac, don't go to school. Runs all night, runs all right. Maniac, Maniac, kiss the bull. And sometimes the girl holding one end of the rope is from the West End. And the girl on the other end is from the East End. And if you're looking for Maniac McGee's legacy, his monument, that's as good as any, even if it wasn't really a bull. Meaning Maniac McGee was the one that integrated this town, and blacks and whites finally started living together and going to school together. There's a reason this book won the Newbery Medal for the best children's book in the year that it came out, and I do believe it was 1990. That was my first year teaching. I hope you enjoyed the book, guys. Here's a little bit of piece of advice. Do not take the AR test. Save it for next year when you need a book. Or you're a little short, go take the test for Maniac McGee then. Have a good day. Enjoy your summer. I love all you guys.